Welcome to the Edumagic New Educator podcast, the go-to show for supporting new educators navigating the exciting journey from campus to the classroom. Join your host, Dr. Sam Fessich, for a blend of inspiration, advice, and practical strategies, one cup of coffee at a time.
I'm Jessica Peresta, host of the Elementary Music Teacher Podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network. Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Hello, Edumagicians, and welcome back to another episode of the Edumagic podcast. My name is Dr. Sam Fessich, and today I have with me Dr. Colleen Duffy from Misericordia University, and we're going to be sharing what common challenges student teachers may face in the classroom. Dr. Duffy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. I'm thrilled to be able to share a few minutes with your listeners. I think one of the biggest challenges that students face as they go out into student teaching is a disconnect they sometimes encounter between what they've been learning, the emerging theory in their classroom, and what they encounter in a veteran teacher's classroom.
Yes.
So it creates a sticky situation because student teachers have been prepared to go out and teach in a tiered system of support, for example, and they might go into a cooperating teacher's classroom and the classroom is not structured to be run that way. The teacher is maybe still teaching a very homogeneous lesson for everyone, and she's not approaching it as an inclusive sort of setting. And so we don't want to send student teachers out and say, disrupt the system.
No.
You know better. But at the same time, we don't want them to just abandon everything that they've been taught for the past 4 years. So it's a really tricky situation for them to be in because we want to be respectful of the environments we're welcomed into. But at the same time, I want to encourage them to, once they have the opportunity to take control of that classroom, to leave their imprint there, make it a little bit more their own classroom, and to not just fall into the easy tide of whatever the cooperating teacher was doing. Mm-hmm. So challenge yourself to reestablish classroom routines if you have to, once you get control of that classroom. Mm-hmm. Group students differently if that's what you need to do. Redesign the room, take some time to teach the flow of your room, especially if you're going to approach in tiered supports, and really try to reinforce good, sound teaching practices that are current instead of just picking up whatever binder the classroom teacher was using and do whatever she's used to doing or he's used to doing in that classroom. I think it's a fine line between being disrespectful of the environment you're welcomed into, but also at the same time, we want them to be practicing current best practice. So It gets a little sticky sometimes.
So how would you approach if a student teacher is like, okay, I'm noticing this in my cooperating teacher's class. This is not how I would do that. How do you have that conversation with a cooperating teacher in a supportive way? Because yes, they are still guests in the classroom, but how do we continue to support our student teachers in an environment where it may not be having all the best practices that we've taught them?
Mm-hmm. Well, I would have them choose their battles. So choose which subject you want to flex on, right? So if you were in a situation where you were in a very traditional setting and students are sitting in isolation, single desks, I would probably start there. Just, be their guest for a little bit and then say, one of the things that I wanted to practice with was classroom layout, right? Would it be okay with you if I change the student seating arrangements and see what happened? And so then maybe we could change seating arrangements. And once you do that, now you've established an environment that's a lot more conducive to having different students working at different levels. Mm-hmm. And then kind of branch out from there and just kind of approach it as I'm here to learn. Would it be okay with you if I tried this? And that way, you're not being disrespectful of the environment. You're getting the approval before you start changing things up in the classroom. But also, it's an opportunity for cooperating teachers to see what's new and emerging. Mm-hmm. And if the professional development hasn't trickled down yet, we could be in a situation where we're learning with and from each other instead of, trying to just mold people to keep doing the same thing that's been happening over and over in classrooms for the past 20 years or so.
Yeah. And I think it's important that the future teacher has something to share in that classroom space. they do bring experience and ideas into that space, but they're also going to learn from that cooperating teacher as well. So it's a nice relationship for that professional learning piece.
Yeah. And I think speaking of professionalism, teachers are learners just as we are teachers. And, some of the most valuable lessons I've learned from my colleagues, from walking by their door, from sitting in their classroom for a little bit. And it's okay for the student teacher to be teaching things too. Yes. We just have to do it carefully and respectfully. But I do think that they're members of the learning community just as much as the cooperating teacher is and just as much as the students in the classroom are. So don't be afraid to apply theory to practice.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. You're right. We are lifelong learners. I mean, we're here at KDP Convo, going to all sorts of sessions and continuing our professional growth as well as professors of education. And I would be remiss. We are two edtech professors, so we have to geek out just a little bit about some edtech tools. So I know this is going to be a tough question because I would find it a tough question too. If you were to just pick 3 tools that a student teacher could brush up on before they start their placement, what would they be?
I would pick anything that enables you to do as much and as effective formative assessment as you possibly could in the classroom. So whether it's a quick quiz or poll tool that allows you to assess all of your learners in a snap and get really nice analytics that you can look back over and figure out strengths and weaknesses super quickly. As far as tech tools, there's so many, but I think that one tool alone really gives the most power to making instructional modifications because, whiteboards were pretty quick with, hands up, but if you teach over a full unit using like a quiz game like Kahoot or Poll Everywhere or something, the analytics you get from that, from the touch of a button, you really get a lot of insight into student weaknesses and strengths.
Yes.
And that really helps with like grouping strategies or providing enrichment or remediation. So there's a lot of power in any sort of formative assessment tool, but we'll give a shout out to quizzing and polling tools. Anything to engage students. I think as uncomfortable sometimes for veteran teachers to live in a technology-rich classroom, that's as uncomfortable as our students are in a paper and pencil-rich classroom.
Right.
And we're asking them to communicate in a way that's not native to them anymore. Mm-hmm. They are very much of the digital era. Mm-hmm. So I think encouraging the use of technologies, even if it's simply just to engage students, is good. So certainly use whatever learning management system you have available to you. Maybe frequency is the great equalizer, right? And what if just a student having access to your content whenever they want it, whenever they need it, to watch it 5 times is going to make everyone proficient? We don't know that yet, but it could just be frequency. So use your learning management system.
Yes.
And then the last one, if I had to choose 3, what would it be? I would say computer adaptive testing.
Ooh, tell me more.
So having the ability to pre-assess at the beginning of a unit, which I think we generally don't do enough of. Using computer adaptive testing, you could give all students in the classroom the same first test question. If students get it right, they advance to a more difficult question till you reach their zone of proximal development. Likewise, a student you give that first question to, if they're not getting it right, it will make it easier and easier until it hits their zone. Yes. So again, just being able to be really clear about where your students are, where you need to start building on that foundation to make sure that they have the prerequisite skills they need. And it's really quickly done with any sort of computer adaptive testing.
Those are 3 great options. I think my favorite was get to know the LMS because it might be Schoology, it might be Google Classroom, it could be Blackboard. If you can get a free teacher account and just try it out before student teaching, just so you get used to the layout.
Absolutely.
The skills are going to transfer from platform to platform, but just try it out.
Yes.
And see how it goes.
Absolutely, yes. I agree.
Yeah, excellent. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Duffy, for your time. This has been fantastic. Do you have any more tips for our student teachers before we close out today?
No, just persevere, hang in there. Yes. It's challenging sometimes, but the rewards far outweigh. So thank you for pursuing teaching. It's such an important profession. We need more great teachers in the world.
Absolutely. It's the best profession on the planet.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Edumagic New Educator podcast. If you found it helpful, please leave a rating and review or share it with a friend. Always remember, you have the Edumagic in you.